think I'll fade out while I finish breakfast.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. I don't have anything particular to lay out, but I am going to put something in the chat that I saw on the AutoCAD email list. It's a guide to ISBD punctuation and cataloging that is freely available, and I thought might be useful to folks who don't have access to RDA or would like a more cohesive overview. Lots of great examples.
Oh, good. I searched for that for half an hour one day without any success.
Yeah, I looked over it and it's a very nice handy guide I found.
Okay. Dig into that with great depth.
All right. So does anybody have anything they wanted to bring to the group? Yes, Bruce.
I've been having some challenges with the 662 field, hierarchical place names.
Oh.
Genealogy library, that kind of, you need not just the city name, but the county and the district and all the rest of that. It does not appear to be gathering an authority file. If I try to check an authority file for it, it brings up the general geographical list, but it's not capturing into that list. And I got no clue from looking at the documentation where to go from here.
Wow, I have to admit, I don't use 662s.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the US Mark.
Mm-hmm. The tag is well defined. That's not the issue. The issue is how to get Koha to build an authority file from it, like it does for everything else.
It sounds as though it might be an indexing issue in Koha, that it would have to be directed to capture that 662 in the same index as the 651.
Does it need to be the same?
Well, or a different index if you want a different index.
That's right. And yeah, the example in the chat's relevant, but the the challenge is how to get an authority set up for it.
I wonder if there's a ready framework for that out there, maybe on the wiki?
Couldn't find it. Okay. I'm doing something strange then. I have to slog through it.
Or boldly go.
Yes. I actually added, I think it was 651 or something. I use a lot of fields that don't actually exist, but I managed to get Koha to index them and make it searchable. I should have written it down.
Yes. I found a section on the wiki called Create a New Authority Type.
Okay. Thought I'd done that, but I will go look again.
I've just posted a link about adding it into a zebra index, which may be what you're looking for. I'm not sure which indexing you're using.
It's zebra.
Yeah, so that might help you. It's got a step-by-step process, but as I haven't tried it, so I don't know.
Fair enough. All righty. Well, thank you. You've given me a few places to go. My reading is set for the next week.
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to hearing how it goes.
I'll report back.
Great. Does anybody else have anything they wanted to bring to the group?
Oh, kind of a silly story.
We love silly stories, Fred.
Well, our library got a book on neurological emergencies, which was bought for the nursing program, though it's not specifically nursing related. And apparently, we're the only library in the world that has this book. Yeah, not in WorldCat, not in Connection.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah, but you're used to that. I'm not. The only record I could find was an XML file at Library of Congress. So now I know how to upload an XML cataloging record. So I learned something. But I made up a few subject headings. Grabbed a few from miscellaneous places. But what call number am I going to use? Is it neurology, or is it emergency care, or is it under nursing? And I obviously overthought this quite a bit and posted it to MedLib, Medical Librarians Listserv, and 10 people answered with 15 different suggestions, because it could go anywhere. But I narrowed it down either to WB 105, emergency medicine, medical emergencies, or WL 141, neurology. Now, these two spots on our reserve collection are maybe that far apart, so it really doesn't matter. But on the other hand, I want to get it right. So anyway, I eventually said, any guesses? Medical emergencies. And then thought, well, probably better over there. So Heather, this is mostly your fault.
All right.
I have come to the opinion in cases like that I may as well toss a coin, because the next patron to come is going to look in the wrong place anyway. And patrons are like that. But if I've done a good enough job with the subject cataloging, it won't be an issue. And I can always relocate it if the next 3 patrons all agree.
Well, this brings up, before we started recording today, some of us were chatting about classification systems. And I mentioned that I will often, if I'm undecided, take an item to our reference librarian and just say, where do you want to find this? And oftentimes I will put, if we're doing something intentionally non-standard to keep certain items clustered together for browsing and retrieval, I'll put the standard Library of Congress classification number in the 050 and then put what we did in the 090. And this reminds me of a new feature. I think it's new in Koha 20.05, that you can, there's a system preference for telling it, if I'm remembering correctly, telling Koha where to look for the call numbers. Let's see if I can find that. While I'm digging around for that, did anybody have anything else they wanted to mention to the group? Well, Bruce, you mentioned earlier, you mentioned a really innovative way that you classify biographies.
Yeah. The problem I've got is it's mostly royal biographies. So you get a name and a number. And uh, I did a quick check on Carl II and came up with 6 different people. And Carl's with C and Carl's with K is more a matter of the source than the individual. So what I've done with my biographies is I've organized them by birth date, which is quite unambiguous, and it means that contemporaries are on the same shelf next to one another, which is how most of our patrons will want to do things. They'll look at contemporaries when they're doing biographical work. It is perhaps not ideal, but it is very simple and evades the problems I've observed in every other system I've met. And thanks to Wikipedia, anybody that's royal has got a clearly identifiable date available. And even if I don't agree with Wikipedia, it's a standard and I can blame it on them.
What do you do with King Arthur?
Listed him as a legendary character. There is almost no historical data to suggest that he existed before Le Morte d'Arthur was written in the 12th century.
You know, I'm looking at King Arthur right now.
The individual, the book, or the flower?
I was just about to mention the flower.
And King Arthur is a brand name for baking flour in the U.S. Didn't want you to be too confused.
Interesting. In the Library of Congress name authority file, it's Arthur, King.
Yeah. But I started digging to try and find dates for him and got vague generalities, and Wikipedia doesn't even try. So I said, okay, fine. I'm going to punt him over into the fiction character. Put him on the shelf next to Thor.
The variant names in that record are wonderful.
Yes. And we've got a whole shelf and a half just devoted to the Arthurian legends and various Grail pursuits, which weren't even a part of the original story.
Well, I guess saying original story is in itself even complicated. One source in this authority record I'm looking at does list dates of 475 to 542, which is interesting.
Which is pretty remarkable, considering there's just no written history from that period.
Any source of that information, or are they just
Yeah,
need a
there's
date? It's mandatory field. Let's make up one.
Goodrich NL.
Yes.
So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, not as interesting as you might hope.
I did put the development in the chat for adding item number as an option for, or no. Oh, thank you. Barbara put another thing in the chat. The one I added was about item call number preference to allow, you can specify multiple fields from which Koha can pull suggestions from the item call number, which was the one I was thinking of. And Barbara added item number is an option for moving, attaching an item from one bib to another. Ooh, Barbara, that looks great.
Well, it seems like when you move an item, you have to have a barcode to move it. And sometimes we're having to do this on an on order record. So we've attached it to the wrong thing or something. So we don't even have barcodes yet. So in order to move it, I have to go put in a fake barcode in order to merge it over there. And it seems like if you were able to move by item number, which it's going to have an item number, that would be easier to do, and you wouldn't have to actually have a barcode in that field. So if you think that's something useful, you could comment on that in bug 27648.
I'm going to put another bug in the chat that I thought was really interesting, number 27320, which is another one of Barbara's. Add collection and shelving location options to the Mark export tool.
Yeah, I was wanting to do a big export, and you can do it by item type, but we wanted to get down more granular to, certain locations. And so I had to end up running a report and do it that way. But if in the tool, you could select by a location or a collection code, that would just give you some more, functionality in there.
We have a thumbs up from Cecil. I agree. Has anybody else seen any interesting things in Bugzilla?
And mostly I've been working on other things for the past month, like trying to get that installation video working and dealing with computer issues and hiding under my desk.
As one does.
Yeah, well, it looks like it'd be really nice and warm outside, and it isn't.
I feel your pain, Fred. It's down to 57 here.
Yeah, you do have a winter coat, right? Yeah, one of my coworkers is off to Sarasota for a week. She sent pictures. 75.
Barbara put another interesting bug in the chat.
Well, with 2005, there's a bit of a change in behavior in Z39.50. You can set up your servers to be selected by default. And so they'll always be checked when you go in there. But you used to also be able to then, add some other servers, do a search, save your record, add your item. And then when you did your next search, those additional servers that you had checked, not the default, the additional ones you had checked were still checked. And so it's kind of like they were in a, I don't know, like a middle level of saving, and now every time you go back and do a new search, those are all cleared out. So we have servers that we have checked for by default that we always want to check, but I have other servers that maybe I'm doing large print and I only want to, use this server some of the time, or I'm doing Spanish and I don't need it checked by default, but I would like it to save as I'm going through and cataloging a batch of Spanish, and it clears out every time now. So it is a change in behavior with 2005. So if that's important to you, it's bug 27363.
It's interesting because I've had those clear out for me back to 1905. It may be a local setting that I've got wrong.
It does seem like it would be a major impediment, but it's certainly slow you down. Wasted motion. But don't get me started on Frank Gilworth and motion study.
Oh, I could tell you more about the 22-pound scoop shovel.
Is that Frederick Taylor or Gilbert?
I don't know. It was one of the first studies, and they were trying to figure out the best possible size for a shovel for a fireman keeping a coal-fired steam boiler going. They found that a shovel that carried 22 pounds of material was optimal. And people think my life is foolish. Oh, irrelevant question, but kind of important. How can I preserve today's wonderful chat and all the links?
At the end of every meeting, I copy the chat, and Jason will add it as the comments below the video when it appears on YouTube on the koha-US channel. So
Also,
Okay.
if you want to save your own copy, at the bottom of the chat, where it says, to everyone and file, and then there's the box with 3 little dots.
Right. I found that, but I've also found that if I don't get to it quickly enough, and Heather logs off first, it vanishes.
That's why you save it every 5 minutes or so.
Yeah. Reminds me of a day I almost got assaulted by a coworker. He was complaining that his something had crashed and he'd lost his data. And I said, well, it's not important data. What do you mean it's not important? He said, if it was important, he would have backed it up.
Yeah, I filled up my C drive. Now I'm trying to clone it and make a bigger system, but I can't log into the Linux part of it. And some things like Zoom aren't working.
well, I came across a very tiny little thing that I realized might be of interest to folks. I was digging deep into the 008 position 6 type of date publication status. And let me put a link to the Mark bibliographic in the chat. And I was cataloging an online version of a manuscript logbook that had been kept over a period of, I forget exactly, let's say 1830 to 1832, a really long voyage. And cataloging this as a monograph, I had the instinct, and I remember always putting M for that period, multiple date, 1830, 1832. And M is also what one would use for a multi-volume monograph that was published over a span of a few years. But when cataloging according to archival rules, say cataloging a finding aid for the archival collection that happened to have one item and it was a logbook, instead of M, one would use I for inclusive dates of collection. And suddenly I was questioning myself and I couldn't remember the rationality and I couldn't remember which was particularly which. So I went digging in there to remind me. And it was an instance of where the OCLC bibliographic formats and standards for this field didn't have all the information that the US MARC format at loc.gov had. And the MARC format for it, let me dig in and get the particular link here for value M, said the code is also used for a single part unpublished item that has been executed over a period of time, such as a painting.
I understood about, well, I understood painting. But that's why I'm here, to learn.
Well, and we're lifelong learners too, and we don't remember everything unless we're using it every day. But then again, some things I find like this, it's like I use it every day. I've built that sort of instinct and muscle memory, but it's easy to forget the rationale or the source.
Yeah. And right now I'm still trying to upload. Well, first of all, I have to delete all the clinical key online books and then add them back. Because they revise the collection every few months. I add a few and take away a few. And I do that maybe once a year. And, which is why it takes me so long to do it. And then,
We're circling back to the need to create documentation.
yes. Okay. But yes, I do need to document stuff a little better.
I used to work as a technical writer for a company that made hardware and software, both. And when I got there, it was the documentation says, here is the function of each of the tools. And I did my best to turn it upside down and say, if you want to do this, here's the tool to use. And the Koha documentation hasn't made that flip yet.
Yes.
And so this is why we have problems whenever we want to say, how do I do the X? You got to go through, oh, what do you know? It's not listed by letter, it's listed by number. You got to look at them all. It's a good way for me to review things I'm going to need later, but
Well, that reminds me, I am working on a cataloging reference sheet for koha-US to go on the in the Learn area of the website, and I emailed it out to those in the cataloging SIG email group, which everybody's welcome to join, make that pitch, and received some absolutely wonderful and incredibly helpful suggestions that I'll be incorporating into that. So I want to thank everyone for that.
I didn't respond because I couldn't think of anything else.
Well, it's a living document. So even once it goes up on the website, we can always add, change, adapt, which I'm sure we're going to be doing too as different versions of Koha evolve and grow. But hopefully that will be one step towards providing some mention of, you know, that other approach, that here's how I do this.
And I suggested to Heather, and she bounced it right back to me, saying, incorporate a little bit more about MarkEdit, which is actually a wonderful tool. Koha doesn't do everything, and MarkEdit does a lot of other things. She suggested putting it in the general Koha documentation. And neither of us has the time and energy to do that right now.
I can't get it to install.
MarkEdit?
Yeah.
You're using Ubuntu?
Debian on the website and Linux Mint locally.
Okay. I know it works in Ubuntu. I'm not sure.
I have no doubt that it would work. It just, I get the crashies. When I forget the frustration, I go back and try again.
I would suggest posting about that to the MarkEdit discussion list, because Terry Reese monitors it and often replies almost instantaneously.
I didn't know there was such a thing. I will get
yes.
get on with it.
Let's I'll put a couple links in the chat.
Do any of you have MarkEdit integrated in with Koha?
Yes, I do, and it's very easy to set up.
Can you describe to me how that works? I mean, practically how it works?
Definitely. In fact, I can share my screen, open it up. Let's see if this works. I haven't used MarkEdit in a little while. All right, are folks seeing my screen?
Yes.
Great. So here's my MarkEdit. And Fred, you use MarkEdit much more often than I do, so I'm going to depend on you to chime in.
Okay, I will say, however, that I have set up integrated with Koha, but I don't use that Koha function much.
Okay. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So you want to go to the Koha menu item, and then you do a search. Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. Let's look for, there we go. Have my nice 3 records. I remember download all items. And this downloads a copy. Let's see, let me move things here. And here are my records. And it's really easy to do updates, check authorities, that sort of thing. And then you can send them back into Koha from MarkEdit and update and overlay them, which is really handy.
So the update and overlay, is that matching on the Koha record ID?
Our Koha installation is set up to match on a 999 subfield C,
Yeah,
which is right here.
yeah. That's the Koha bibliographic ID, yeah.
Yeah,
Great,
Cecil asked,
thank you.
how do you get to the Koha part? See, somewhere in the Koha, MarkEdit menu, there is the option to set up with an ILS.
If you click on the little cogwheel down in the lower right, that gets you to your settings.
Supports
Thank
Koha
you.
and Alma.
There we go. And I'm running an older version of MarkEdit. I will mention that. and its integration with OCLC has changed in more recent versions.
Okay, ALS integration is bottom left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I wish I had you guys helping me out with many things. But here we go. Here's the ALMA, here's the koha. And in the koha manual, you put in your settings.
I do think you have to be set up for Z3950 as a Z3950 target, because that's what it uses to pull the data in. So you have to put your Z39 information in as well to connect to your server.
Which is why I don't use it, because I can't get to Z3950 ports from the hospital network.
Gosh. And
Could-
I also have it set up with OCLC, which was a little bit more complex. But with OCLC's help and with the help of Terry Reese in the MarkEdit, I got it working. And he has some great YouTube videos. Oop, let's see. There we go.
Heather?
And we have some questions here. Leanne says, had an issue downloading MarkEdit because personal computer is too old and couldn't update the Mac OS. Ah, that could be an issue for folks. I think I saw some recent developments from Terry Reese about the Mac versions. And Cecil asks, how do you get the koha part?
That's
Cecil,
when he just answered.
yeah, the Z3950.
At least I hope he answered it.
If not, speak up, let us know.
I'm confused here. Are we talking, do you have to set up Z3950 on your koha catalog or on the MarkEdit?
Both, I think.
I think on your koha catalog, because MarkEdit already comes with that capability set up. Oh, good, we
Okay,
have a thumbs up from Cecil. All right.
Okay, time to get down and make that happen. And next month you can all laugh at what I've done wrong.
We never laugh at what folks have done wrong here because we're all doing things wrong so often.
But I said you could laugh. I didn't say you could criticize.
Can I point?
Well, I enjoy laughing at myself because then I'm endlessly amused.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a subject, signature quote. Next month. May I attribute it to you? Or do you want trad?
Either way. Well, does anybody have anything else they'd like to bring to the group?
I think I got enough to keep me going for a while.
Leanne chimes into the chat about a really great class on library juice for using MarkEdit. Oh, thank you, Leanne. A virtual 4-week class for $175. I know a bit steep, but did learn a lot. Natalie Hall taught it, and she's awesome. Good to know, Leanne. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna save that.
I don't know, that's about a quarter of my accessions budget for the year.
Yeah, that is a steep cost for many, but if one can find the funds, that sounds like a really good class. I know I really enjoyed Terry Reese's YouTube videos on his YouTube channel. I learned a lot from those, and those are free.
Maybe when spring comes, I'll have a little more energy. Sit back and watch them.
I think if that's all we have for this month, I'll go ahead and end the recording.